Hello, and welcome to In Pursuit of Truth and Happiness. Last episode, I completed my analysis of the Iliad and historical interpretation, focusing on how the Iliad presents to us the cycle of war repeated throughout history, as well as the philosophical mindset that leads to war. This mindset of apotheosis on human terms by attempting to dominate others through force and violence characterizes the mindset of Achilles. From there, I left off and now continue this analysis of Achilles alongside Hector. A question was put forward to me once when I finished reading the Iliad. Why is Achilles the hero of the Iliad? My initial response was, he's not. How can he be? I have slightly revised my answer now to whoever you are most metaphysically aligned with is the character you consider the hero to be. If we are to appreciate the relevancy of Homer in our own time, interpreting the Iliad through the lens of metaphysics goes a long way to see the universal in the Iliad outside the limitations of temporality. Metaphysics is the philosophy that studies the nature of reality in all dimensions, including the purpose of human existence, the nature of reality, and the first principles and purpose of the universe. If we begin to break down Achilles and Hector as more than just literary figures or even historical figures and understand both these characters as metaphysical arguments, then we really begin to dive deep into the Iliad. And for the record, treating characters of a book as metaphysical arguments does not undermine their reality as a human being in history, but places the character and the entire worldview of the character in a timeless scope that transcends the limits of historical time periods and the literary works the characters belong to. Beginning with Achilles, as we saw in the previous episode, Achilles is a man without restraint. He is a man that perceives an arbitrariness to the actions of the gods and relegates life at times, at least, if not completely, as a curse. To see life as a curse with no hope of any permanent good that can come from heaven is the path to despair. In this situation, virtue and suffering are not meritorious and can lead one to decisions of suicide and other destructive behaviors. In this case of Achilles, his metaphysical understanding bars any restraint on his behaviors. His rage against Agamemnon, his rage against Hector, and his mourning for the death of Patroclus. In all of these scenarios, there appears no end to Achilles' rage and mourning. Yet even in this can be glimpsed Achilles' attempt at apotheosis, or to a state of elevation beyond himself, to be a force of nature as the gods are. It will be said in the third part of this analysis again, but the human attempt to reach out to truth is the human attempt to reach the immaterial. To reach out to truth is to, in essence, reach out beyond the self. And this is, in and of itself, not bad, but quite the contrary. This is a natural pursuit and is ingrained in who we are. Apotheosis, on the other hand, is taking this natural desire to the extreme to be, in effect, what we naturally desire. Divinity, or a force of nature, as a status that represents a state of fulfillment, a state of happiness in which the human being will want for nothing. This attempt to be divine is, in some way, something I equate here with being a force of nature on the battlefield as seen in the Iliad. This is common throughout history and has led to many war crimes and tragedies that stretch across the pages of history. This quality of human nature and being is thus present in the person of Achilles, as we have seen in his actions and words. In summation, Achilles seeks happiness just as the rest of humanity does, but through the seizure of force and the use of force on others in an apotheotic quest on his own terms that results in the destruction of those around him and himself, all originating from a cynical metaphysical understanding of the human condition. The contrary metaphysical view to Achilles' view is exemplified by Hector. Hector is the chief defender of Troy and stands as the blueprint for every patriotic soldier in the history of the world. Hector is a soldier through and through, and does not shy away from war any more than Achilles does, although with admittedly more restraint than Achilles. But even this is in question, as it was Hector's lack of restraint from attacking the Greek ships that led to the death of Patroclus, which leads in turn to Hector's own death and the subsequent fall of Troy. However, unlike Achilles, Hector shows introspection and can admit to his own mistakes, such as in Book 22 when Hector acknowledges the mistake of attacking the Greek ships, when Polydamas warned Hector not to attack the Greek ships. This admission by Hector demonstrates a strength in character and value placed in virtue. Moreover, Hector may be a soldier, but he is more than just a soldier. Hector is also a father and husband. While Achilles is a warrior, Achilles has no wife or children to speak of, while also showing no signs of restraint or introspection. Hector stands in stark contrast as a family man. As stated in the previous episode, one of the episodes that speaks best to who Achilles is when Achilles fights the river god Scamander. In like fashion, the episode of the Iliad that best shows us who Hector is found toward the end of Book 6. In this scene, Hector is about to go off to war, when Andromache, Hector's wife, begs him not to go off to war. Not wanting to face the shame of running away from war, Hector refuses to run. But even in this refusal to be a coward, Hector recognizes the fate and doom that will befall Troy, and the Greeks will be victorious. In this, Hector reveals his deepest fears of his wife living in slavery. Hector then goes in to reach for his infant son, Astyanax, when the baby recoils and cries at the sight of the suited-up in bronze, monstrous-looking Hector. Hector and his wife laugh at this, and Hector, noble prince and noble man that he is, subsequently takes off his helmet and comforts his child and prays to Zeus that Astyanax may be like me, first in glory among the Trojans, strong and brave like me. Hector goes on to pray, however, that his son not just turn out to be like him, but for one day the others may look upon Astyanax and say, he is a better man than his father. This prayer of Hector speaks deeply to who Hector is. Hector is a man who fights, yes, for the glory he claims, as much as himself. But he is not solely fixated on glory. Hector fights to protect his family and people. He also prays to Zeus that his son does better than he does. This hope speaks to the heart of every good parent, for all good parents desire nothing more than their children to prosper and do better than they do. Hector understands as well as Achilles that he is doomed to die, and understands also Troy will not stand forever. Hector is all too familiar with his limitations as a man, in stark contrast to Achilles. Hector has faith in the arbitrary Zeus. Hector has hope in the face of deep-rooted fears. Hector, in short, is not only virtuous, but has hope that his suffering for virtue will have merit, even if Hector does not outright believe that his suffering for virtue is meritorious, even if this is implicitly believed and not explicitly understood. To return to the original question addressed at the beginning of this analysis of Hector and Achilles, who was the hero of the Iliad? My answer stands as thus. The hero depends on your metaphysical and theological understanding. If you do not believe in the merit of suffering for virtue, if you believe in the progress of science and technology as the path to human happiness at the expense of virtue, in as far as this will apotheosize mankind and fulfill the human condition, then one might favor Achilles as the hero of the Iliad. But if merit is found in suffering for virtue, and one believes in a transcendent good that only a power from on high can bestow, then one might regard Hector as the tragic hero of the Iliad. This brings me to the end of this character analysis of Hector and Achilles. However, before a final conclusion can be reached over the entire work of the Iliad, a final character analysis must be made on the last group of characters talked about in passing, but nevertheless play a significant role in the fate of Troy. the Olympian gods and goddesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of In Pursuit of Truth and Happiness.